Chapter 5. The Grave Truth. 6 months into Ricardo's sentence, a cold case file was reopened in the parish of St. Mary. A landslide near an old family plot had unearthed a zinc casket. Inside was a body, perfectly preserved by the unique mineral content of the soil. Inspector Barrett received the DNA report and felt the world tilt. She drove to the prison personally. She sat across from a gaunt, hollow-eyed Ricardo Knight.
"You killed her, Ricardo. We all saw the evidence,"
Barrett said, her voice trembling.
"I did.
Ricardo whispered.
Me feel her neck snap. Me feel the weight of her."
"Then explain this."
Barrett slammed a file on the table.
"This is a death certificate for Toya Scott, dated October 14, 2016. Cause of death, hemorrhage."
Ricardo stared at the paper.
"That a lie. Me did it with her. Me touch her."
"We dug up the St. Mary plot, Ricardo. The body in that casket, it's Toya. She's been dead for 10 years. The DNA matches the blood we found in your apartment because it wasn't blood. It was embalming fluid and ectoplasmic residue."
That evening, Mrs. Scott was arrested and interrogated about the death of her daughter. Beatrice Scott sat at a scratched wooden table. She looked aged by 50 years, her hair a wild halo of white. Inspector Barrett sat across from her, a recording device between them.
"Beatrice, Ricardo is gone. Total catatonic state. He keeps talking about a great child. What did you do to that girl 10 years ago?"
Beatrice stood over the shallow hole, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She had used a shovel to break the soil beneath the mango tree. Toya's eyes were open, staring at the Jamaican stars.
"You too stubborn.
Beatrice whispered, wiping sweat from her brow.
You stay here with me. You stay home forever."
As she shoveled the first mound of dirt onto Toya's face, the girl's hand suddenly reached out and grabbed Beatrice's ankle. It wasn't a struggle for life. It was a grip of possession.
"Okay, Mama."
The corpse's mouth didn't move, but the voice rang in Beatrice's skull.
"I'll stay, but I'm going to need a lot of company."
For 10 years, Mrs. Scott lived a lie. She interacted with a tulpa, a manifestation of Toya's spirit fueled by her grief and her own vanity. She posted to social media through sheer force of will. But when Toya dated Ricardo, Mrs. Scott was terrified. She knew a living man couldn't bond with the dead without something breaking. Beatrice leaned in close.
"I never just killed her, Inspector. I kept her. I used an old opiate jar under the mango tree to chop her spirit so she couldn't leave me for Miami. Taya did want to leave Jamaica. She did want to go Miami with a man I never liked. We argued. I pushed her. She hit her head on the granite. I wanted a daughter forever."
Beatrice's eyes filled with a terrifying clarity.
But a trapped spirit is like a stagnant water. It goes sour. It rot. But she stayed with me. Taya didn't just haunt Ricardo because he killed her. She haunted him because she needed a living vessel to feed the rot. She used her life force to give birth to the grief I planted in her heart 10 years ago.
Beatrice began to laugh, a dry hacking sound that echoed through the visiting room.
"You see, Inspector, Taya was an influencer. Even in death, she influenced the mind. She influenced the heart. And now she influenced the bloodline. Ricardo isn't just a prisoner. He's a nursery."
Beatrice Scott was led away in handcuffs for the 2016 murder, but as she walked to the police lockup, she looked back at the glass door. Toya stood in the reflection of the glass. She wasn't an influencer anymore. She was a gray, hollowed-out thing, her hand resting on her swollen, translucent belly. Chapter 6. The Sentence of the Scene. The judge, a veteran of the bench who thought he had seen everything, looked down at the forensics report delivered by Inspector Barrett. It was the smoking gun that had arrived an hour ago. The legal system was in a tailspin. How do you convict a man for murdering a woman who was already legally dead? Counselors, to the bench, the judge commanded. The lawyers huddled. The judge whispered, "The DNA from the carpet? It matches the skeletal remains found in St. Mary, but the carbon dating on the marrow suggests the marrow died a decade ago. Yet, the blood found in the defendant's apartment is fresh. It's as if the biological matter aged 10 years in a single night." Ricardo Knight stood up, screaming.
See her there? Look on her. She turned up right next to the judge desk.
The court officers lunged for him, but Ricardo was swinging at the air, his eyes wide with terror. To the gallery, he was a madman. To Ricardo, Toya was leaning over the judge, her skin translucent, her stomach bloated and rippling with something that definitely wasn't a human fetus.
You killed me again, Ricky.
The ghost whispered, her voice audible only to him.
But Mama started it. Now we can all be together.
The conviction for murder was overturned on a technicality, but Ricardo Knight was never released. He was moved to a psychiatric ward. The pregnancy hadn't been a lie to trap Ricardo. It was a manifestation of the guilt and the blood he had spilled. As Beatrice was driven away to the woman's prison, she realized the horror of her daughter's haunting. Toya didn't want revenge. She wanted an audience. And now, in a prison cell in a psych ward, Ricardo and Beatrice would be her only followers forever. Chapter 7. The Cradle of Shadows. The psychiatric ward at Bellevue Hospital was a place where the air felt curdled. Dim fluorescent lights hummed with a low-frequency buzz that grated on the nerves of the orderlies. But for Ricardo Knight, the noise was drowned out by something much softer. "Rock-a-bye baby on the treetop." Ricardo sat in the center of his padded cell, his back against the reinforced door. His once pressed police uniform had been replaced by a gray, oversized jumpsuit. His eyes, once sharp enough to spot a concealed weapon from 50 paces, were now filmed over with the milky haze of a man who had seen too deep into the void.
She's almost here, Barrett.
He whispered to the empty room. He thought Inspector Barrett was sitting in the corner, but the corner was empty save for a rising dampness on the wall. The temperature in the cell plunged. Breath bloomed in the air like white carnations. From the shadows beneath his cot, a figure began to coalesce. It wasn't the vibrant, filtered Toya of Instagram. This was the Toya of the St. Mary soil. Her skin was the color of wet ash, clinging tight to the high cheekbones that had earned her millions of likes. Her silk dress was tattered and stained with the dark, oily fluid Ricardo had tried to scrub from his floor. She crawled toward him, her movements jerky, like a film skipping frames. Her belly was no longer a gentle curve. It was a translucent, pulsing sphere. Inside, something moved. Not with the fluid grace of a fetus, but with the frantic, multi-limbed scurrying of a trapped crab.
Ricardo,
She rasped, her voice sounding like dry leaves skittering across a grave.
it's time. Daddy needs to hold the baby.
Ricardo tried to scream, but his throat felt like it was filled with graveyard dirt. He watched, paralyzed, as Toya's midsection began to tear, not with blood, but with a shimmering silver light. Out crawled a small gray thing. It had Toya's large, beautiful eyes and Ricardo's strong jawline, but its skin was cold to the touch, and it didn't cry. It hissed. A sound of pure, unadulterated hunger. The digital ghost. That night, for the first time in months, Toya Scott's Instagram account updated. A single photo was uploaded. It was grainy, taken in a low-light room that looked suspiciously like a hospital cell. It showed a man's hand, Ricardo's hand, recognizable by the faded scar on his thumb, holding a tiny, pale, four-fingered hand. The caption read, "Family is forever. New arrival Island Queen reunited." Within minutes, the post had 50,000 likes. Only 2 people knew the truth. One was a mother screaming in a padded cell, and the other was an ex-cop in Bellevue, rocking a shadow that didn't have a heartbeat, but had a very, very long memory.